Welcome to the Meaningful Success Podcast. My name is Josiah Clark, and this is the Big P Dubs, my dad, Papa Wade.
That is a new one.
And this week we have a bit of a problem.
What is our problem?
Our problem is that sometimes we sit down and we'll have thought ahead of time about here's what we should talk about on the show. And nothing sounds good. Nothing sounds like it resonates. Nothing feels like the right topic for the moment for whatever reason.
So it's like writer's block for a podcast.
Kind of, yeah. But I thought of something we were talking about just the other day that I think is actually a really good topic for this week, which is when you have started your success journey and you realize that something somewhere just isn't working.
Okay.
We try and practice super transparency here on our incredibly successful and wildly profitable show.
Oh boy, here we go.
And we're sharing our whole journey. We're sharing the highs and lows, including about the podcast itself. So we talk about our Patreon every week. And we have realized in the last couple of weeks that our Patreon just isn't It isn't working.
It isn't hitting the mark.
Well, and that's nothing to do with level of support because there's not anybody who has signed up on it yet, right?
No, I think when I say it's not hitting the mark, I think it's a little bit that we're trying to find a discovery of what would be truly valuable.
Yeah, because we've been doing episodes that were more just kind of fun. Like here's an episode of us doing a Lord of the Rings, what character are you quiz. Here's an episode where we're talking about the holidays. Here's this, here's that. What we've realized is that sort of show, those sort of topics, they don't resonate. They're not really building something.
That's a good way to put it.
And so we had a conversation a few days back where we started trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? What should the Patreon even be? Should we even have a Patreon? What kind of show would it be? What kind of stuff would we do? And this is just a really good example. We launched the podcast about 3 months ago or so now. We're in this place where it's still very new, very young, but we're moving now. Like we have a rhythm, we have a routine. We've even in the show itself, like we've got, the back and forth going way better than we used to.
Yes.
Yeah. You're so right. Amen.
Preach it.
Preach. So good.
Anyways.
We're realizing we need to alter course with at least part of this business.
While at one side, we're starting to find our stride.
Yeah.
We're starting to get in a groove of the things that we want to talk about on this podcast. And I'm sure that's going to evolve over time and those types of things. However, because our goal is to share our journey as we are seeking success in entrepreneurship and in life. And one of the things that we talked about on last Saturday was that really one of the things that we are really aiming at is not just, but the creative community. That's a big community that we both identify with. Let's put it that way. Business, entrepreneurship, and the creative community. Now, there's other things as well, mission-oriented groups and that kind of thing. But right now, that's something that we have interest in, and we want to share that journey.
So kind of the core of this, I feel, is there's an underlying question. And that underlying question is, what does a change in direction look like in the context of your mission, your vision, your strategy, all these things, right? This business is following this formula, this system. When something's just not working, where does the adjustment come in? Is it a vision thing? Is it a mission thing? Like, can you kind of talk about, if we're looking at this through the lens of the meaningful success
it's two
ideology,
things.
so to speak?
It's two things. The first thing is the vision. Really, our values have not changed. Our mission has not changed. What we really want this to be about from the standpoint of what we're aiming at.
Yeah.
But what that vision is of what the holistic vision of the things that we're doing, that is adjusting. And that's fine. It's like determining, it's like you're sitting down with your family You have a vacation coming up. You want to have a great vacation. You want to do something, and you sit down and you come up with different ideas.
Yeah.
And sometimes you even start down the road saying, okay, yeah, let's do this. And then something else, a month or two later comes up and you say, you know what? I think that's the direction we want to go. So you changed your destination. And that's really what we're talking about. And in the case of this podcast, we have the podcast and then we have the Patreon. And while they are closely related, they are unique in and of themselves. And so there's a destination that we're looking at. So in this context, one is, what is the destination we're wanting to take the podcast? Where's the destination we want to take the Patreon support group? We want each to have a value and impact. Then the second piece is the strategy. But the strategy is simply, so if this is our destination, how are we going to get there? So we're not even at the point yet where we're talking strategy because we're still looking at that vision for the in this case, the Patreon.
Yeah. And one of those questions is, do we have a Patreon?
Or do we have a Patreon now?
Right. So these are big business model questions that we're facing right now. And it may be valuable for us to look at these things through the lens of past experience.
Okay.
Because this is not the first time for either of us that we've started something and discovered this isn't working. This is not accomplishing the mission / vision that I have for this thing I'm doing.
Correct.
Right.
And it doesn't even mean that it's not good. So there's things that you can be doing that in and of themselves are good. I think about the company I work with and such. I mean, there's always dozens of things that we can be doing that all could be good, but it doesn't mean that those are all things that we should. Could and should are sometimes two different things.
Well, what's an example in your life experience where you've started something and it something's just not right? You need to make a change.
Well, I think one of the example would be a number of years back, I had my own consulting practice, and that consulting practice, that's a learning experience in itself, just in the terms of the business. I worked with a number of clients and I felt like it was impactful and it was fruitful. However, when I looked at what I was really wanting that business to look like and how I wanted that to translate into how it impacts my life, my family, and lifestyle and various things like that, I realized that I was still trading time for money.
Yeah.
I was still trading time in such a way that I was literally working oftentimes 7 days a week. And while there's nothing wrong with that in per se, it really was not where I wanted to be. And so one of the things that it actually was an early predecessor to even the things that I'm doing now, is I really realized that one of the things I wanted to be about was more content development and things that I can create that have a life in and of themselves. So once it's created, it's there and it's a resource for people, but it's something that I've built and I can move forward and I can move on. And then that can sit there and do what it does. And you still learn on your strategy and your promotion and all those types of things. But that was an early impetus even of what I'm doing now. So I did make the decision a number of years back to close that consulting practice. And one of the things that I knew I was going to hold on to was developing content, books, courses, things that I feel like could be helpful.
That was one of the last big projects you were working on in that business, actually, was putting together a big e-learning.
It was.
Yeah.
And in that situation, I ran through a lot of things that I learned, good and bad. But yes, that was one of the things that was part of that process.
In those situations, what do you think the key for you is in approaching that transformation and that transition in the most productive / healthy way?
Well, I think that you have to ask yourself a few questions. And one of those is this something that is a literal stop and change directions?
Mm-hmm.
And there were other circumstances at that time that were going on with that business, and I will get into it more in my book, so you'll learn more about that in the Meaningful Success book when that comes out. But there were more things that going on just in that one decision. But sometimes the decision is to stop and to go a different direction.
Yeah.
And then there's other times that's not the case. And I think for a lot of times it isn't the case. It's a situation of a redirect. And you slow efforts on one area while you build efforts on another. And it's more like a relay race where you're handing the baton and you kind of move from one to another. But there's a point when you think about those relay races, a runner's running, but then there's this whole transition period of time where they're both kind of running together and they have to pace themselves and such to where they can hand that baton off. And that's a lot of times that may be the situations too. It's not, I'm stopping, those runners don't stop and hand the baton and the other person takes off. There's a transition. So it can be one of multiple things, but I think it can be both directions. How about yourself? I mean, Josiah, when you think about transitions or reframing your vision, either it's not working. It doesn't necessarily have to be it's not working. It can also be, you know what? This is really not what I was hoping for. This is really not what I was wanting to do or what I thought this might be. In your experiences, what kind of examples can you think of?
Well, a recent one that I think really applies to this is with my writing 2 years ago now. I had started writing a story called Fall Forward. It was this very dark kind of gloomy story about this guy who makes a deal with the devil and in order to claim the power that he's offered, he has to kill somebody. And it's this whole, it's very melodramatic, angsty, I guess. It's not that it was bad. I actually went back sometime in the last couple of months and I actually reread it.
Right.
I still think it's pretty good.
The writing is very good.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well written. But I got to a point when I was writing that story where I think I got 6 chapters in and I just realized this is just not what the world needs right now. Mm-hmm. This is not, and this isn't what I need right now. It was just not the kind of story I wanted to be telling.
Right.
And the kind of story that I thought would actually be what people needed to read. Because at the time, this is 2 years ago and things are peak pandemic.
Yeah.
Not a fun time.
No.
Not a happy time. And
there was a lot of angst already.
Yeah. And it just felt like I just had that sense of this just isn't what is needed right now in the world. Yeah. And it actually, saying that now reminds me of, I saw this interview with Steve Martin one time when he made the big change in his career, because he's talking about this time in the 70s, I think it was, when a lot of the stand-up was super political.
Mm-hmm. Well, you had Watergate and all that stuff going on back then.
And hippies and the aftermath of Vietnam and just all this stuff. And he realized he had this moment that was very similar to what I experienced with Fall Forward, where he was like, I don't think this is what the world needs. I don't think that this kind of humor, I think people are sick of it. Mm. I think people are sick of thinking about, the doer politics all the time.
Right.
And so he cut his hair and he changed his wardrobe so that he started wearing nice tuxedos for his sets and stuff like that, and changed the topic, changed what he was doing. Mm. And that was when he started seeing real success, because he shifted from something that wasn't working to something that was. And so it was a really similar thing for me with Fall Forward, where it was this just isn't what the world needs. And so Originally, I had another book that I was planning on writing after I finished Fall Forward. I wasn't at a place where I was ready to work on that book yet. Mm-hmm. And so it's okay, well, great. Well, what do I do? And so I had this idea that had been just sort of on the back burner for a while, which was what became Pinstripe. And so I just kind of started that for the sake of starting something.
Right.
And it was a very different sort of story. It's much more of a lighthearted, adventuresome sort of thing, and it just felt right in a way that Fall Forward had not.
Well, the interesting thing is that there was 2 pieces, both of those journeys, both Steve Martin and yours. One was realizing what you needed. The other one was realizing what the world needed.
Right.
It was being circumspect and really looking inside and out and what was needed.
So if we apply this to what we're talking about with the podcast and the whole idea of there's Patreon, there's these different business models, right?
Right.
What do you think the world needs from our podcast if we're going to expand this thing, which that's kind of what the Patreon is really about, is it's about expanding this, as well as for you yourself. Like you said, there's yourself and the world around you.
Yes.
What's just your gut telling you with that?
I think first is to consider the fact that people are tired.
Yeah.
And I mean tired in a few different fronts. One is literally physically and emotionally and mentally tired. I think that coming out of the pandemic, there was a lot of changes that people had to adjust to. I think there's been a lot of life changes. I think there's been a lot of societal changes. And I'm even somebody who embraces change, but it's a lot. And that can lead to just an exhaustion. And so one is that I think that we need something to bring to recharge our batteries. I think we need something that's going to pour in instead of having to always pour out.
Yeah.
And that way we can each refresh each other as we kind of go on this journey. I think another thing is a point of objectivity and reality. I mean, I joked on a previous podcast that, you see, we're bombarded on, YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and all these things from all these people who promise the world. I think we have to be objective and realize that anything that's going to be worthwhile, anything that's going to be enduring takes time. It's not like all these people are, in fact, they all talk about, oh, this is not a get rich quick thing type of deal. But I think that there's still this push and this drive that also adds to that exhaustion. But I think that this objectivity and the reality that, listen, we're in this for the long haul. We're in this together to help each other be successful and to achieve the dreams that we have, which leads to the third item, which is I think we all have, in different ways, shape, forms, we have dreams, we have hopes, both for our families and for ourselves and for society. And kind of where that priority falls can vary by person. But I think we have hopes and dreams that a lot of times I feel like are locked away. We've kind of put them in a closet, sometimes in a suitcase in a closet covered up with blankets, and it's just like it's buried, it's locked away. And I think that it's time for people to realize that, you know what? First of all, God's given you dreams, God's given you hopes, God's given you talents and gifts that you want to explore, that you want to pursue, and that's a good thing. And it doesn't matter whether it's, I want to do stand-up, I want to do improv, I want to write a book, I want to sing music, I want to do art, I want to do sports, I want to do a marathon. It really doesn't matter what those dreams are. It's good. And that's part of what life is about, is to pursue those dreams. And so I think that the community needs something as a support of people chasing their dreams together. So I think one, again, goes back to the renewal, because we're exhausted. Two is that objectivity, that it's going to take some time and that there's going to be bumps on the road that we need to work through together. And three is not only is it okay, but we need to celebrate and really support people chasing those dreams and those passions in their hearts. There are a lot of other things that kind of wrap into that. I'm a man of faith, and I believe that there's things that I want to do to make the world around me better. But a lot of those things get wrapped up into all those other things that I talked about, those hopes, those dreams. A lot of times those are kind of meshed together. So it's not like it's necessarily a separate thing. It's just part of that process. It's the way that you treat other people. It's the way that you work with other people that all blends together. I mean, what are your thoughts?
The two things about this podcast that come to my mind that feel like these are the things that we have to offer that are truly unique and special.
Mm-hmm.
One is the father-son connection aspect.
Yeah.
And us doing this in relationship with one another, and the journey of that, and the advice and the wisdom and the learning from one another, and all that stuff.
And that's so true. We do learn from each other every week.
Yeah. So it's I think that's one big thing about this. And the other is that I'm experiencing this need myself, is that need for community around your passions and dreams and the stuff you were talking about.
Correct.
This is not a platform of, oh, hey, we've got all these people over and we can have these huge conversations with all these people. I mean, it's a podcast, right?
Right.
But there is something to the idea of this is a platform that we are sharing a journey with people.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully in the future, a way that this platform, this podcast, can facilitate connections between other people.
Yes.
Whether that is through some sort of a community hub that we're still figuring out or whatever that may be. But those feel like the two big aspects of this podcast, more than any methodology, any topical discussion, anything.
Absolutely.
It feels like those are the two big things. So when I think about how can we expand and grow this podcast in a way that's what we need and what the world needs, I feel like maybe thinking about, I mean, this is off the top of my head and this is an evolving discussion, maybe coming up with some alternative Patreon show or some other way of doing the Patreon or whatever. Maybe that's not the point right now. Maybe it's more beneficial to us and the world to do like 2 episodes a week of the show instead of 1, or do, I don't know, but somehow expanding and focusing on here, what we have here.
Yeah.
Rather than
diluting.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say is it maybe we need to double down our focus on those kind of core important aspects of here's what we really feel like this show does for people and is for people, and for us.
All right. This is a journey that Josiah and I are taking together. Now, we each have our own individual pursuits. It's not like, yes, this podcast is together and we have some things that we're working together on certain things, but we definitely have our own directions. Josiah's writing and things of that nature, about my writing and books. And, I have thoughts of, doing music and other things like that, whether or not that's a part of a business or just for fun, that's a whole nother thing, or ministry, whatever it may be. But we have our individual pursuits, but we're both on a journey. We both have an entrepreneurial spirit. We both are creatives, and we both have things in our hearts that we believe are right and wrong and that need to be addressed in society. And honestly, we learn from each other on those things, and we shape each other's opinions. We don't see eye to eye on everything, but it's other things that we kind of do. And likewise, I think there's others out there, hopefully, that you're listening, that you have some of those things as well. That's why we keep saying, to send us a message and to say, hey, this is something I'd like you to talk about. Our goal is to make this something that's a community. We call this the Meaningful Success Podcast for a very specific reason. And that is that
it's a podcast.
I was thinking about the word "the."
Oh, you're right.
No. Meaningful success, meaning that there is weight, there's gravity, there's purpose behind however you define success. And it's not about applying someone else's measures or metrics or things. It's about defining what you want your life, what you want your pursuits to be about, and aligning your life, your business, your work, your hobbies, your things along those things that matter to you, so that you positively impact the people and the groups and the causes that matter most to you. That's why we call this the Meaningful Success Podcast. It's very open-ended from how you define that for yourself. It's individual, personal.
Well, you know what else is individual and personal, Dad? Our weekly favorites.
Oh, it's the weekly favorite.
Well, I'm not going to start this time. I'm going to have you start. What is your weekly favorite?
My weekly favorite is this past week, Audrey and I found a super good Vietnamese restaurant that is not too far from where we live. And it wasn't very expensive. And it's like, it was very, very good. And I liked it.
So what did you eat? What was your order? What was on your plate?
Audrey got pho. I got, what did I get? Oh, I got lo mein. I got a chicken lo mein, but it was very, very cheap but not sacrificing on quality for that, because, you go to restaurants and it feels like it used to be that like an entree at a restaurant was like $10, right? But now they're like 18.
I know, it's ridiculous.
And this is one of those places where it's like, oh, like this, everything on the menu is pretty much like reasonably priced. Like, hey, like this is a $10, entree.
Honestly, these days you can go to any kind of fast food place, which I don't like fast food, but even if you go to a fast food place, it's $10 a person. It's crazy.
Well, yeah. And like, Audrey and I, we like Chipotle a lot. But we don't get it very often because, just to get like 2 entrees with like maybe some extra meat or something, and then like a thing of chips, It's like we spend like $40.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's ridiculous.
It's nuts. You could go to, it's nuts.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's my weekly favorite is a new really good restaurant.
Well, I have my own weekly favorite, but I didn't know that was pronounced pho. I thought it was faux.
I believe it is pho.
Huh. Interesting.
But I don't quote me on that, but I most often heard it pronounced that way.
I'm ignorant on that, so probably you're right. Well, my weekly favorite is back to media. Suzanne and I found actually at Audrey's recommendation, another manga anime that we're watching, and it's Spy X Family. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, Spy Family.
Spy Family, if the X means anything there. But basically, two spy, a mom and a dad, and this girl who's telepath, and it's just kind of fun. It's kind of cute. So we've been enjoying that.
Yeah. What do you like about it?
I like the fact that the girl who's telepathic, I'm not going to spoil the storyline, but basically the father and the mother come together in an unexpected way, and they don't know a lot about each other. But since this girl can read everybody's minds, she gets so shocked at things that each of them are thinking, but she doesn't share it. And so it's just this whole secret thing going on. And also I'm recognizing some of the voice actors sound like some of the same voice actors in One Piece. I don't know if that's accurate.
Yeah, the more anime you watch, the more you're going to catch that. For example, there's a show called, an older anime called Yu Yu Hakusho. That's like a classic series, and I couldn't watch the Japanese version. I preferred generally to do the Japanese version because I tend to like the voice acting better.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't do it because there's a side character, a prominent side character in that show that is played by the same voice actor who plays Luffy.
Oh, really?
And it's this is before One Piece. The One Piece anime was made. So this is an earlier role that she had. She's playing this like baby god that's like a prominent character. And all I could hear was Luffy. And it was so distracting that I had to switch to the English.
Okay.
Because I just couldn't, it just was driving me nuts.
I could see that.
But that's something that it's really interesting how you start recognizing that stuff. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. And bye.
Oh, that was abrupt. We do appreciate it. Send your ideas in if you have some thoughts. If you want to be a guest on the show, on our website, there's a place to put out a form.
Leave us a digital voicemail at speakpipe.com/MSP.
And we did that so that you don't have to write out Meaningful Success Podcast.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right.
Anyways, thanks. Have a great day.
You know what you wouldn't like, Dad?
What?
If it was speakpipe.com/MSG.
No, that's probably true. It'd give you headaches.
So you hate MSG.
Yeah.
The Meaningful Success Podcast is cool. Thanks for listening.
There you go.
There you go.
But I won't back